All right, friends, we have to talk about something super important, but pretty boring, and that is car rental insurance. I think you've all heard me say by now that I think the best way to experience Iceland is by renting a vehicle and driving around the country yourself. But driving in Iceland can be quite the adventure. You have unpredictable weather, high winds, blowing sand, gravel roads. So it's pretty important that you protect yourself and choose the right insurance coverage for the vehicle. Hey, my name is Jeannie and I am an Iceland travel expert with 10 years of experience, and I've heard way too many horror stories of people paying so much money towards their car insurance after all is said and done, but that's not gonna be you because you're watching this video. Let's get into it. The first question you might be asking yourself is, why do I need insurance for my vehicle in Iceland? And the reason for that is you might be a good driver, but the person that's oncoming or next to you or behind you might not be as great of a driver. You might be careful about something that you've rented and needed to protect, but the person that parked next to you might not care about your vehicle. They might fling their door open and dent your vehicle. You can't control if there's a vehicle in front of you and they fling up a rock, which breaks your windshields. So there's definitely things that are just simply out of our control. Not to mention the crazy weather conditions in Iceland and how you could be going from a perfectly sunny day to super high winds when you're right next to a black sand beach, and all of a sudden you're getting tiny little dots in the paint. The point is, you can never account for all of the risk and the potential of damage, and this is why insurance is important. So we need to talk about the types of insurances that are offered. I know this is going to be the most boring part, and I'm going to speed through the types that are offered because it's always up to you to choose what kind of coverage you want, but I think it's super important to at least let you know what's offered. The first thing that you need to know is that all vehicles are required to be covered with the bare minimum of the CDW or collision damage waiver insurance protection when in Iceland. In certain countries around the world, sometimes you can deny insurance coverage. This is not the case in Iceland. So other than CDW, there are a few options that you can add on. Some of these options include Super CDW, which is basically the baseline plus an elevated level that reduces your deductible. Gravel insurance, which is something that will protect you when you're driving on gravel roads if something comes up and cracks your windshield. Theft insurance, I usually say Icelanders are not going to be the ones that are stealing your things, it's other tourists. And then last but certainly not least is sand and ash protection. One thing that I'm really proud to point out about Blue Car Rental is that these insurances are already included in their prices, with the exception of sand and ash, but we'll talk about that in a bit. And the reason that's important is because Blue Car is unique in that regard. When you're searching online for prices of vehicles to rent in Iceland, you might come across another website that has cheaper prices, but when all is said and done and you have to add insurances to their prices, it's going to end up to be the same, if not more expensive. So Blue Car includes that, which is super, super handy. And as you know, Blue Car is my go-to rental company of choice. I've partnered with them for years and I wouldn't recommend them to you if I didn't believe in their quality and service being the best in the land. And exclusively for Team Iceland, you get 5% off your rental price if you book using the link in the description below. And for this portion, I'm going to be referring to the Blue Car website so I can read you off the list of what's not covered under insurance. And this is really important. I'm going to get to this in the next point to explain everything, but pay attention because this is another big difference between Blue Car and other rental car companies. So what's not covered is damages caused while intoxicated to the interior of the car, to the tires or by replacing a tire and damaging it yourself, to the clutch, so not being able to properly drive a manual transmission, underside of the car, that's a big one, by driving into water or rivers or driving off-road where you shouldn't be driving, by wind blowing open the door. By the way, wind in Iceland is no joke, and this is by far the most common claim. Speeding tickets and parking fees not included, and damage caused by sand and ash. So again, that was an extra protection. The reason that I'm telling you all of this is because Blue Car offers what's called a liability waiver. And what this does is it essentially brings all of the deductible and responsibility down to zero. That list that I just gave you of what's not included, forget about it. Peace of mind, driving with ease, all is good if you do add on the liability waiver. So if you want to be in Iceland having a stress-free experience and a nice little vacation, this is the way to go. Just keep in mind, there are a couple of things that are not covered under any circumstance, and this is just like being a smart driver, and that is driving while intoxicated, any intentional damages that were caused to the car, and then damage caused by pure negligence or driving where you're not allowed to. So some examples of this is if you take a hammer to the car and you just decide that you're going to try and harm the vehicle, if you're gonna drive on the F-roads with a two-wheel drive vehicle where it's prohibited, things like that. Just pure negligence or intentional damage to the car. Those things are obviously not going to be covered. I'll just tell you straight up, I personally believe that the wind damage to the door and the damage to the underside being covered with the liability waiver makes that 100% worth it by itself, because those are really, really common things and really expensive things to fix on top of it. So again, if you're looking for that peace of mind, the liability waiver is the way to go. The final thing I wanted to talk to you about is their roadside assistance program. Blue Car offers 24/7 roadside and breakdown assistance, which is obviously very nice to have in a country where you're unfamiliar with a lot of things and anything could go wrong. So this is covering things like towing assistance, flat or damaged tires, if you lose your key, or if you're on an F-road and you need to be rescued. Bottom line is, Blue Car really does go out of their way, in my mind, to ensure the safety of their customers. So just know that even if you purchase the insurances, the liability waiver, have the roadside assistance, anything could happen, right? Again, things are out of our control. And when this does happen, it can be really frustrating, because not only are you dealing with that circumstance and it's taking away from the experience of being in Iceland, but now it's taking time to, contact someone, have someone coming out to meet you, have maybe like the vehicle being replaced, all of those things. That just kind of dampers the mood. No one wants that. So the bottom line is always make sure that you're protected and insured properly, but then also just be a safe and responsible driver. If you're planning to rent a vehicle for your Iceland trip, make sure to watch my next video where I cover everything you want to consider when renting a vehicle for your road trip. I'll see you in the next video, but until then, happy planning.